Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to try to understand Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
You wanted to, go deeper than just the headlines and really understand him and his motivations and how he got to where he is and his impact.
Absolutely.
So we've got a stack of sources here, biographies, articles, even some clips from his interviews over the years. And let me tell you, it's fascinating stuff.
It's really interesting how much his story is a story of contradictions.
Yeah.
He's a self-proclaimed billionaire, but he's filed for bankruptcy multiple times. He's a reality TV star who became the leader of the free world.
Yeah.
And he's a figure who inspires both fervent loyalty and just intense opposition.
So let's unpack this. I guess we'll have to start at the beginning, right? Donald John Trump, born in Queens, New York, 1946, fourth of five kids, son of a successful real estate developer. So seems like a pretty privileged upbringing, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
But it wasn't all, smooth sailing. His father, Fred Trump, had incredibly high expectations and ran his business with an iron fist.
Oh.
And, sending Donald to military school at the age of 13 really speaks volumes about the kind of discipline that was instilled in him.
Yeah, that's a good point. It makes you wonder how much that kind of experience shaped his personality and leadership style.
Right.
We see that theme of discipline, but also this almost combative approach to negotiation and deal making that really became his trademark.
Yeah, and it's interesting to contrast that upbringing with the populist image he cultivated later in his career.
Right.
He presented himself as a man of the people, someone who understood their struggles, even though he came from a background of considerable wealth and privilege.
Yeah, it's almost like he created this persona,
Yeah.
this larger-than-life character that people either loved or hated. But you can't deny that it was effective. So he goes to Fordham University for a couple of years, then transfers to the Wharton School of Business at UPenn, joins the family business after graduating in 1968. It seems like a pretty standard trajectory for someone in his position.
Yeah, but even then there were signs that he wasn't content with just following in his father's footsteps. He had this ambition, this drive to not just succeed, but to dominate. He took his father's real estate business and supersized it, aiming for these grand, almost audacious projects that nobody else was even attempting.
Yeah, like the Grand Hyatt Hotel in New York City.
Yeah.
He swooped in and basically renovated this aging, almost derelict hotel right next to Grand Central Station.
Wow.
And then, of course, there's Trump Tower, this gleaming skyscraper on Fifth Avenue that became a symbol of his success and, well, his ego.
Exactly. He understood the power of branding before branding was even a buzzword. He put his name on everything, buildings, casinos, even airlines. He created this image of luxury of success, and he marketed it relentlessly.
Which is fascinating when you consider how many financial setbacks he faced. I mean, the guy filed for corporate bankruptcy multiple times in the 90s.
Yeah.
The Taj Mahal Casino in Atlantic City was a massive financial disaster.
Yeah.
How do you go from those kinds of lows to becoming president of the United States?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? He had this uncanny ability to bounce back from setbacks, to spin those failures into a narrative of resilience and even victimhood.
Right, and you can't ignore the role of the apprentice in all of this. He went from being this somewhat controversial real estate mogul to a reality TV star, "You're fired," became a catchphrase, and it exposed him to a whole new audience. Do you think that paved the way for his political aspirations?
It's hard to say for sure, but it definitely raised his profile and solidified this image of him as a decisive leader, someone who wasn't afraid to make tough calls.
And someone who knew how to put on a good show.
Yeah, it's interesting how that show, The Apprentice, really let him craft this image of business savvy and success, even though his actual business record is, well, let's just say more complicated.
Right, it's almost like he created his own reality and people bought into it. So how does this guy who's been in the tabloids for decades, who's known for his lavish lifestyle, and let's be honest, his sometimes outlandish statements, how does he make the leap to politics?
Well, there's a long history of celebrities, entering politics.
Yeah.
But Trump was different.
Yeah.
He wasn't a traditional politician. He didn't have any experience in government, and he didn't really play by the rules.
Yeah, he was the ultimate outsider. And he played that role perfectly. Remember when he announced his candidacy in 2015? He rode down that escalator at Trump Tower and delivered this speech that was basically a greatest hits of his controversial talking points on immigration trade deals, American decline.
Yeah, and it resonated with a certain segment of the population.
Right.
People who felt ignored by the establishment, who were frustrated with the direction of the country.
Yeah.
He tapped into that anger and frustration, and he gave them a voice.
Make America great. Again, that slogan was brilliant. It was simple, powerful, and it evoked this nostalgia for a bygone era that frankly probably never really existed.
But it was effective.
Yeah.
He campaigned on this promise to bring back jobs, to restore America's standing in the world, to drain the swamp in Washington.
And he did it all with this brash, no-holds-barred style that was unlike anything we'd ever seen in a presidential candidate. He used Twitter to bypass the traditional media, to attack his opponents, to control the narrative.
Yeah.
It's really unbelievable.
And it worked. He won the Republican nomination, defeating a crowded field of seasoned politicians. And then he went on to win the general election, defeating Hillary Clinton in what was probably the biggest political upset in modern American history.
I still remember watching the election results that night. It felt like the world had been turned upside down.
It was a seismic event,
Yeah.
and it revealed just how divided the country had become. Trump's victory exposed these deep fissures in American society along lines of race, class, education, and culture.
So he becomes president. And his presidency was, well, chaotic, to say the least. There was a constant stream of controversies, scandals, staff turnover, and Twitter feuds.
He governed in much the same way he campaigned, impulsively, provocatively, and with a disregard for norms and traditions. He alienated allies, cozied up to dictators, and implemented policies that were often cruel and discriminatory.
The Muslim travel ban, the separation of families at the border, the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, the trade war with China, it was one thing after another. And then, of course, there were the 2 impeachments.
It's important to remember that he was impeached by the House of Representatives twice.
Right.
Once for abuse of power and obstruction of justice related to his dealings with Ukraine, and then again for inciting the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. He was acquitted by the Senate both times, but the stain of impeachment remains.
His presidency was this roller coaster of drama and division. And it all culminated in that shocking attack on the Capitol, which was fueled by his baseless claims of election fraud.
Right. He refused to accept the results of the 2020 election, which he lost to Joe Biden. He spread these conspiracy theories about a stolen election, which ultimately led to that violent mob storming the Capitol in an attempt to overturn the results.
It was a dark day for American democracy, and it's something that we're still grappling with as a nation.
Yeah, it's wild to think that even after all the, the impeachments, the controversies January 6th, that he still has such a devoted following.
Right. It's a testament to his grip on a significant portion of the American electorate. Even after leaving office, he's continued to hold rallies, endorse candidates, and really shape the Republican Party in his image.
He hasn't faded into the background like some former presidents.
Not at all.
He's constantly in the news on social media, and he's even hinted at another presidential run in 2024.
Oh, yeah. Which raises some interesting questions about the future of American politics. I mean, what does it say about our political system that someone who was impeached twice, who incited an insurrection, could potentially regain the presidency?
Yeah, it's definitely something to think about. And you can't deny that he's changed the way politics is done in this country.
Right.
He's shown that you don't need political experience, you don't need to be polished or articulate, and you don't even need to tell the truth to be successful.
He's tapped into something powerful, this deep distrust of institutions, this anger at the status quo, and this desire for a strongman leader who promises to fix things.
Yeah.
So where does this leave us? We've gone from the kid from Queens with a silver spoon in his mouth to the reality TV star, to the most powerful man in the world, and now to, well, what exactly is he now?
He's a force to be reckoned with, that's for sure. Whether you love him or hate him, you can't deny that Donald Trump has left an indelible mark on American history.
Yeah.
He's reshaped the political landscape, he's exposed the fragility of our democracy, and he's forced us to confront some uncomfortable truths about ourselves.
Wow. This deep dive has been quite a journey. We've covered his upbringing, his rise in the business world, his chaotic presidency, and his continued influence on American politics. It's a story that's as fascinating as it is troubling.
It's a story that's still being written and one that we need to continue to examine and understand. The lessons we learn from the Trump era will shape the future of our country, for better or for worse.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It-
We hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of this complex and controversial figure. It's certainly given us a lot to think about. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.